Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janaballabha Girivaradhari Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodhanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Chayom Vishnu Pada Paramahansa Pariva Jakacharya Ashtotar Sadhya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kota Vaishnavindi Ki Namacharya Shlaka Satakur Ki Prem Sikho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Yay. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Hiri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Yamuna Maya Ki Tulasi Deva Ki Bhakti Deva Ki Samaveta Bhaktavrinda Ki Lord Chaitanya's Harinam Sankirtanam Ki Prihatmadanga Ki Shri Shintai Gochandra Ki Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamiti Namah. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Vacharine Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paschachate Shatarine. Hare Krishna. Good morning everybody. Haribol Lakshmi. Nice to see some very old friends again here in this, what did you call this part of the world? Can you repeat what you told me? Pardon? Maha Sudha Prabhakshetra. Amazing. I guess you all know what that means. Maybe you're not familiar with that term. What does it mean in the local language?
It means a place of great separation.
A place of great separation. Interesting. Christchurch, New Zealand, off the main line in many ways, although you get many, many, many tourists here, many people come to these distant islands for various reasons. But geographically, yes, we're a long way away from Baba was sometimes talked about, in this far distant corner of the world. And he was referring to Gainesville, which is, not exactly in the middle of nowhere. It's in the middle of Florida, in America, or USA. I have to say USA. But even that he referred to this far distant corner of the world. Far away from Mayapur Dham, far away from Vrindavan Dham. Yes. So you were bringing here Mayapur Dham here to Christchurch. Last night during the kirtan, some devotees were remarking how they felt like they were right there in the Dham, in Vrindavan Dham or Mayapur Dham. That was Prabhupada's intention, was to facilitate, to create, in one sense, or reveal dhams all over the world, every home a dham. And your homes are like, some of you are like dhams. The temple certainly is a dham. A place where Krishna's presence is felt, where we can feel ourselves in that situation. Although geographically we're a long way away, and that mood of separation intensifies intensifies our attachment to the Dham and to the residents of the Dham, the Guru, our Guru, the devotees of the Lord, and so on. Wonderful. So thank you very much for maintaining the temple so nicely. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto. What was the verse number?
26.
Pardon?
26. 326.
Number 7, okay. This chapter is entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. And it's on the board, I guess. So we'll chant together. Tat asya sangsritihi bandhaha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavati akartuhu ishasya sakshinaha nivrita atmanaha tadasya sangsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatyakarturishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha tadasya sangsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatyakartur ishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha tadasya sangsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatyakartur ishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha. Tatkritam bhavatyakartur ishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha tadasya sangsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatyakartur ishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha. Bhavatyakartur ishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha. Ladies. Tadasya sangsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatyakartur ishasya sakshino nivitatmanaha tadasya sangsritir bandha paratantriyam cha tatkritam bhavatyakartur ishasya Sakshino nirvitatmanaha. Tut. From the misconception, asya, of the conditioned soul, sangsatihi, conditioned life, bandhaha, bondage, paratantriyam, dependence, cha, and tatkritam, made by that, bhavati, is, akartuhu, of the non-doer, ishasya, independent, sakshinaha, the witness, nirvita atmanaha, joyful by nature. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life, in which conditions are enforced upon the living entity by the material energy. You have it on the board? Pardon? Is there? Okay. Although the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, he is thus affected by conditional life. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The Mayavadi, or an impersonalistic philosopher, who does not differentiate between the Supreme Spirit and the individual spirit, says that the conditional existence of the living entity is his lila, or pastime. But the word pastime implies employment in the activities of the Lord. The Mayavadis misuse the word and say that even if the living entity has become a stool-eating hog, he is also enjoying his pastimes. This is a most dangerous interpretation. Actually, the Supreme Lord is the leader and maintainer of all living entities. His pastimes are transcendental to any material activity. Such pastimes of the Lord cannot be dragged to the level of the conditional activities of the living entities. In conditional life, the living entity actually remains as if a captive in the hands of material energy. Whatever the material energy dictates, the conditioned soul does. He has no responsibility. He is simply the witness of the action, but he is forced to act in that way due to his offense in his eternal relationship with Krishna. Lord Krishna therefore says in the Bhagavad Gita that Maya, his material energy, is so forceful that it is insurmountable. But if a living entity simply understands that its constitutional position is to serve Krishna, and he tries to act on this principle, then however conditioned he may be, the influence of Maya immediately vanishes. This is clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter. Krishna takes charge of anyone who surrenders to him in helplessness, and thus the influence of Maya, or conditional life, is removed. The spirit soul is actually Sat Chit Ananda, eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. Under the clutches of Maya, however, he suffers from continued birth, death, disease, and old age. One has to be serious to cure this condition of material existence and transfer himself to Krishna consciousness. For thus his long suffering may be mitigated without difficulty. In summary, the suffering of the conditioned soul is due to material nature. This attachment should thus be transferred from matter to Krishna. So these verses in this chapter describing the cause and effect of the living entities being under the influence of the material energy. Srila Prabhupada starts off the purport. And you might think of several times Srila Prabhupada refers to or infers verses from Bhagavad Gita in his purport in terms of the transcendental nature of the Lord, in terms of how the living entity is conditioned and how the living entity can become freed from conditioning. And the cause of the living entity is suffering in this world. If this is his pastime, then one may question why we don't have control over it. It seems to be imposed upon us to a large degree. If not, people may not consider it all pervasive, but to a large degree the suffering, unavoidable effect of time, etc., is imposed upon us. Whereas, which it means, or it refers in that sense, that there's another controlling force beyond our capacity, beyond our, perhaps beyond our awareness, acting upon us. If it was our pastime, in spiritual terminology at least, it means to say we are enacting that which we want. Indirectly or remotely, we could say there's a certain element there. The living entity is described here, as this word is mentioned. Where is it? Ishasya. Ishasya refers to independent. The Supreme Lord is absolutely independent. So he can do anything he likes. You'd say the meaning of independence is not in any way, let's say, restricted by anything or anybody. He's completely independent, self-sufficient. It's one of the characteristics of the Supreme, self-sufficient. Doesn't depend on anything or anyone. Where the living entity has a minute degree of the qualities of the Lord, putting it simply. And we may not believe in that, but that's how it is. Whatever qualities we see in man is made in the image of God, sometimes we hear. So there's a slight degree of that independence in the living entity. Well, the living entity possesses that independence in us, but in a very small, we're very small, tiny. We're not independent of the material energy. And there's a verse Prabhupada refers to in the purport there. What does he say? Something about very difficult, this material energy. It's very hard to overcome. We try, but we can see their efforts are all to no avail practically. What verse is he referring to in the Bhagavad Gita? Pardon? Okay, that's a good one, isn't it? Daivi yeshu guname mamaya tarachaya. This material energy, Krishna describes it as divine because it comes from him. It's his energy. It's called material from our perspective, but ultimately it's the Lord's internal energy, just like The energy in the prison is the government's energy also, but it's just acting in a different way, reciprocating with those who are receiving it in the form of punishment. So the material energy is Krishna's divine energy, just appears in such a way by Krishna's arrangement to be separated. But it's not really. It's just another corner of the Lord's unlimited energies. One of his many energies. The living entity is also one of the Lord's many energies. Nityo, Prabhupada also refers to that verse. Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam Eko Bahunam Yovidadati Kamam. There are unlimited conscious, the word consciousness is mentioned in today's verse, unlimited conscious living entities. But amongst those unlimited, Eko Bahunam Yovidadati Kamam, there is one supreme controller, origin of all. So he is the origin of all energies in the, which chapter is it? Yes, must be in the 10th chapter, I believe. Aham sarva shapavavo matak sarvam pravartate. What does he say?
I'm the source of all material and spiritual wealth.
Yes. Everything emanates from me. Everything comes from Krishna. Everything. No matter what it is. Even the capacity, or like this material energy, we could say, why so many things are going on. Even the capacity for so many unusual, unpleasant, unwanted, in one sense, events, seemingly unwanted to some at least, go on by the will of the Lord. He's reciprocating with the living entities. He's facilitating their various independent tendencies and desires. Unfortunately, the living entity has this eternal capacity. But when we come under this material energy, we become forgetful. The material energy covers the living entity. We forget our spiritual individuality. And we identify ourselves with the material world. And as long as we're identifying with this material world, it's impossible to get out of it. We may want what we like, but in this world to some extent, although our desires are also a combination of various material experiences and material associations in this world, they're not constitutional. The desire is constitutional, but the desires we have now are not. The general desire for happiness, and peace, and love, and so on, these are constitutional, but we're just, saying, Prabhupada says here, we're directing it towards in the wrong direction. It has to be transferred from matter to spirit. But as long as we're encased in the material identification, as the verse describes, that we're suffering as a result. The soul does nothing, quite clearly mentioned in many places. When it means does nothing, it means that we're not the actual doer in terms of the material effects. There's the causal factor of the living entity being in this situation because of our, as Prabhupada says here, our independent or our relationship, negative relationship with Krishna. So Krishna provides this another one of his energies. It wouldn't be very nice being in the spiritual realm when we hate Krishna or we want to live independently of Krishna. We wouldn't fit in. So he provides an atmosphere where we do fit in to some extent. To give us the opportunity to experience what we want to experience. But even that, you may give your child sometimes something which he insists on, and they misuse it, and they suffer as a result. But they're supposed to learn a lesson. The living entity takes a long time to learn his lesson. They're very attached to being the controller. It's like in a prison house, people are very attached to their misbehavior and associating with persons who similarly misbehave. So the prison is not meant, you don't find too many in the prison house, too many really, you may find some, who are innocent, pious, maybe God-fearing to some extent, but worship, like following the governmental rules, some reform, but the majority maintain their desire to be independent and to steal or whatever they do. from others. It's very difficult to reform in a situation where we're surrounded by others who are of a similar nature. So this material energy is very hard to overcome. We try to overcome it, but it doesn't belong to us. And if we try to, then we remain in the place of the thief. Is a thief. One who thinks that this belongs to me when it doesn't is a thief. Maybe they're not active thief, but they're a potential thief. We're all in that state in this world. We all think this world belongs to us, practically, in some way or another. This is my body, this is my mind, this is my house, this is my whatever it is, my country. This universe belongs to us, this planet belongs to us. We can do whatever we can or like with it, as much as we can. But that's not the case. Like a child thinking the house, in one sense you could say it does, but ultimately, but in reality of this world, it doesn't really belong to the child. We may think like that, but there's a real owner. Krishna is the proprietor of everything. And as long as we think we're the owner, then we'll be subjected to the whatever effects there are according to our relationship with the material energy, because we're not directly relating to Krishna. The original causes are turning away from Krishna, our negative relationship with Krishna. And so he places us in a place where we're not disturbing anyone, where we can get on with our intention, our desire to be independent of Krishna. But we can't really, because the material energy is also his energy. Any more than a child can't really be self-sufficient. The parent provides the food, the clothes, the toys, everything. You may think this is mine, and so on and so forth. I'm the enjoyer of this. And the living entity has that higher, the material energy or the illusory energy of the Lord causes the living entity to see things separately from Krishna, independent of Krishna or God, separate from him. And in this way we remain in this situation ad infinitum without any choice. So in one sense there's a little bit of that lila there, the living entity chose, but he has no choices practically in this world. We appear to have, but ultimately is imposed upon us. We're witnessing. The word is mentioned here, Sakshi, the witness. The living entity is the witness. We have Sakshi Gopal deity, the witness deity of Krishna. We are like the living entity, and Krishna is also these Maha Sakshis, the great witness of every living entity's situation. He's in the heart of everyone. Ishvara, as that verse goes, Ishvara so Nagudesha Junatishti. He's in everyone's heart. He's guiding every living entity who is seated as if on a machine made of the material energy. But it's Krishna who's the actual guide, super soul in the heart. According to our karma, according to our desire, he's guiding the living entity in this world. People are conditioned differently. They have different conditionings. And because we all have these different conditionings due to our individuality, otherwise we'd all be the same. This is the Mayavadi philosophy, I guess. But that doesn't allow the influence of some other energy beyond and above the jiva. And we can see the jiva is subjected, doesn't have freedom in that sense. We're subjected. Like a prisoner thinking I'm the only authority, but he's not. He may try to be, but he's not. He's subjected to the authority of higher power. So similarly, everything is like that. So the matter of just recognition, in one sense, those who surrender unto me, Krishna says in that verse, whatever, 7th chapter, wherever it is, can easily cross beyond it. And those who recognize Jopi son of Yayatma Pakim Samadhishtaya, those who recognize Krishna's transcendental position beyond and above the material energy, they are also freed from the influences of the material energy. But that's not as easy as it sounds. Krishna doesn't easily give that realization or that. In the full sense of the term, it's not just a theoretical acceptance, it's a reality of consciousness. It's a change of consciousness. So the whole thing is about changing our consciousness, instead of identifying ourselves as, in the practical sense, you could say, as the material energy. Either the material energy is all Krishna's energy. You know? What's that famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita? The various, what would we call them? Not elements exactly. The various earth, water, fire, air. What is that verse? Pardon, Bhumir Apalovyam Kanmano Padya Evacha. That all these energies, earth, water, fire, air, ether, they all come from Krishna. The various transformations, you could say, of energy producing various effects, but they all come from Krishna. And we're like watching, just like we're watching, and they have this artificial, no, that's something else. I can't remember what it's called, but people look at things and they completely get absorbed in what they look at. They identify, and we probably have the same experience sometimes. We're so absorbed in some book or some, I don't know, movie or something. We get completely identified with it. We forget our so-called normal identity. And when somebody calls us, we can't relate to the other situation. We can't even remember where we are sometimes. It's the nature of the material energy. We're so absorbed in it. Like a child becomes absorbed in play. They have no conceptual thoughts about anything else. They're completely absorbed in what they're doing. And everyone's the same, more or less. And that's, again, in one sense, that's not completely unconstitutional to be completely absorbed in one's pastime. But unfortunately, this pastime in the material world is only a reflection of the reality. Everyone knows that a reflection is not a reality. A dream is not the full thing. It's a reflection of the full thing. We're in like a dream state right now. We're dreaming I'm this, we're dreaming I'm that, we're dreaming we can do this, we're dreaming we can do that. We're dreaming that God exists or doesn't exist, or whatever it may be. We're having so many, because it's all perceived through this polluted consciousness. And everyone sees things differently, so we have no never-ending disharmony. The unity which the Mayavadi talks about is not present in this material world as such, at least not from the point of view of the conditioned soul. So we try to get away, completely deny the apparent individuality of the conditioned soul entirely. And then one thinks that if that's annihilated, then there will be actual unity. But it's one aspect. But it's not the complete unity because it denies the relationship with the Supreme Person. We're united, but still in one sense. But there's only me. We're the only one that exists. United with what? So we're united with Krishna. And that united with Krishna is uniting through transforming our consciousness. It's not so difficult, but we don't want to do it. We're still very attached to our impression of, in the case of our efforts, our impressions of what it should be, what devotional service should be, or what I should do, or how people should relate to me, or how I should be respected, or and so on and so forth. We interpret or we try to adjust things, but the Krishna conscious movement is not to adjust things according to my conditioning. It's to adjust my conditioning according to the absolute will of the Lord. It's a little bit different. And that isn't so easy. That's not always so comfortable. We're very attached. Oh, the Lord's very kind. He knows, of course he knows everyone. He's in everyone's heart. He knows all of our various desires and the things we're into. We can't hide it from him. So he's very kind. His devotees are even kinder. They engage us despite our, like we're engaging some ignorant persons in some activity without their knowledge. He engages us in various ways, in various acts which purify us of this ignorance, purifies us of this pollution. So we can, again, start to see things as they are a little bit more clearly. Start to realize that well, whatever identity we have with this material world is the cause of our anchor in this world, transforming or transferring our attention towards Krishna. In the previous chapter, there's a very famous verse, which is 2 or 3 actually, the glories of devotional service. We pop back a few verses here. Every learned man, this is text 20 of the previous chapter. Every learned man knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement for the spirit soul. The attachment. It's not the material energy. We sometimes think Maya, the material energy, but it's not. It's our attachment to it. It's Krishna's divine energy. But because we're attached to it, separate from Krishna, we're seeing it in relation to ourselves as an object for my pleasure. People are an object for my pleasure and they should act according to me. They should adjust themselves to satisfy me. So we see it like that to a large degree. So and we're very attached to it. This is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul, this attachment. We've heard the story over and over again of the blind man and the king, and how the blind man in the court, how he grabbed hold of the tree and was screaming, "Let me go, let me go, let me go." But the tree's not holding on, we're holding on. The king could understand the lesson he was teaching. That the material energy is not exactly holding on to us, we're holding on to the material energy. But sometimes we don't realize it, because we're identifying with it, gross and subtle. But that same attachment, when applied to the self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. When we become attached to those who are liberated, those who are actually not identifying with this material world, but are identifying with Krishna, they understand their real spiritual constitutional position, and they don't have any business in this world. They don't come here to enjoy. They don't come here because of karma. They don't come here because whatever other reason is. They only come here for the service of the Lord, to give living entities, conditioned souls, a chance to become freed, to wake up from the dream. Wake up, sleeping souls. And then we read on, because Lord Kapila Dev describes some of the symptoms of those great persons. But there's a very nice verse here, which is in text 24. They're all very nice verses. But text 24 you can read, "Oh, my mother," Lord Kapila Dev says, "O virtuous lady, these are the qualities of great devotees who are free from all attachment." It means all attachment in this world. They're very attached to Krishna, of course, but that's not a material attachment. "You must seek attachment to such holy men, for this counteracts the pernicious effects of material attachment." It counteracts it. This is the only way really to gain release. Of course the Lord can do anything, but this is the general principle. We have to become attached. And becoming attached to a self-realized soul is not a material imposition, it's not a material thing. It may start like that, but it's not. We have to be attached to their path. Follow Mahajana Yena Gataksapanta. We have to follow in their footsteps, which means we have to apply that medicinal, therapeutic. We have to apply it to our consciousness. Expose ourselves to the holy name which they reveal to us. Expose ourselves to a lifestyle which helps to also purify us, but particularly regulate and engage our senses in a beneficial way for spiritual realization. And so many other factors. Become attached to the Lord, deity, form, and so on and so forth. Attached to the Bhagavatam, so many attachments which they give us or reveal to us. But they reveal the method we become attached. We don't speculate on the method. We don't concoct on that. They reveal the process of how to be attached as well. Not just we should be attached. We see in the next verse, text 25, which is There are so many wonderful verses here, which we find. We've been reading teachings of Lord Kapila Dev actually in the last few weeks. Very nice to hear Prabhupada's lectures on these verses. In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and to the heart. As we see in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a very famous verse in the second chapter that we can't just deny the material energy. You can if you want, but that's not enough. Because the tendency of every living entity, the Mayavadis are not perhaps catching this quite, but the tendency of every living entity is Nandamaya Vyasa. We are searching by constitution, the living entities by nature, are pleasure seeking. We want happiness. It's not just to be, say, freed from the duality and the suffering of being under the influence of the material energy. The constitutional nature of the pure soul, freed of the material energy, still remains the same. We're Nandamaya Vyasa. We want to experience pure happiness, or never-ending happiness. That can only be experienced, at least in terms of the jiva, of the living entity, the minute living entity, in relationship with somebody else. Like a spark in the fire cannot really do much unless it's in the fire. Outside of the fire, it's pretty much dead. A living entity without relationship with the whole cannot be completely full. When the spark is in the fire, the spark also is part of the fire. It blazes beautifully. So this hearing in the association of devotees helps to fulfill the complete. The Mayavadis have got one aspect of the constitutional nature, the sat aspect, the eternal nature, correct? Although the living entity cannot remain eternally in the Brahman, nonetheless that is an eternal constitutional position in the sense to be on that platform of Brahman, or sat, the eternal platform of realizing one's a spiritual entity of some whatever type it may be. One is a spiritual, consciously spiritual living entity, nothing to do with the material world. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter he is freed, and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begins. The same verse, or the same principle is there in Bhagavad Gita. Brahma bhuta prasanatmana sochiti nakanshiti smaksaveshu bhuteshu madbhakti navate. When one comes to that Brahman platform, realizing I'm a spirit soul, or I'm spiritual, I have nothing to do with this material world. I'm not this material body. I'm not this material world. This preliminary realization, which is the beginning of actual spiritual life. So that understanding is we can say we agree upon, it's the beginning of spiritual understanding. But then what is my nature as a spiritual entity? That's the real business, you could say, of devotional service, to realize one's actual nature. But that begins, truly begins. Right now we're being engaged. We're being engaged. We're not realized necessarily, maybe, but not much. We're being engaged in activities, and we choose, and we pick, and we argue, and we do this, and we do that. And sometimes we speculate, and sometimes we misuse the Shastric injunctions and all kinds of different things because of our own perspective. So we take shelter of a spiritual master or senior advanced devotees to try to correct that misperception. Gradually, we start to put Krishna in the center instead of ourselves. More and more and more. In that association. And the primary way, as mentioned in this verse 25, is by coming into the association of devotees and hearing the glories of the Lord, hearing about Krishna consciousness in the association of devotees. That is the purpose of this movement. Prabhupada made it very clear. The purpose of our movement is a place, a facility where people can come and hear about Krishna. Because that hearing in the right association is the process of transforming our consciousness. It's not just about doing things, that's also there, but it's primarily focused upon or meant to evoke an attraction for hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what temples are for. Often, in one sense, you could say that's all they're for. Of course, many preliminary things are there, or other activities are there to facilitate that. But that's what the essential purpose of it is. To chant and hear the holy name, to hear about the position of the Supreme Lord. It may take time, and there have to be many preliminaries. We may not go straight into it, but that's what the point is. And that's where real devotional service begins. We can see that in the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy. Lord Chaitanya rejected everything, even up to the point of Sarvadharma Paricharya. He rejected it all. He only accepted it, Jnani Prayasam Udapasta Namant Eva, when Ramananda Roy mentioned this simple point. You come into the association to those, doesn't matter what your position is, as Prabhupada says here, it doesn't make any difference. But everyone's position, anyone can take to this process, if we associate and hear from the pure devotees. And by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Lord in the association of devotees, then we can become freed. This is the real path of transformation. And that's what Srila Prabhupada has given the world, an opportunity to take shelter of this association and to wake up, to become Krishna conscious. It doesn't happen just by institutional rules and regulations. They're only there. They have only as much value as to the extent that it facilitates this purpose. Otherwise, they have no value. Even as sadhana, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, sadhana means that which helps us to develop an attraction for hearing and chanting about Krishna. Otherwise, it is an impediment on the path of devotion. These are his words. We should bear that in mind. Of course, it doesn't necessarily manifest immediately, but we should understand that should be an effect. It's not just becoming freed from the material energy, it's not just becoming somewhat contented in our comfort zones, but is actually to become attracted to hearing and chanting. Not attracted to the gossip, not attracted to, whatever critical things that are available for our entertainment, not attracted to all the secondary things, but the primary purpose behind it all. Attracted to love for Krishna, attracted to hearing and chanting about Krishna, glorifying Krishna, and so on and so forth. Yes, it's not easy when we're surrounded by other attractions. Conditioned we are. We automatically default sometimes to other things, mentally and physically. That's the association of devotees and regularly hearing and chanting, reminding ourselves, helping each other. Lots of kirtan and all the other activities which the pure devotees give us, worshipping the deities. We get off the platform of doing things my way. I want to do things Krishna's way. Focus on his form, focus on his will. Okay, we've got to finish there. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We have a massive program today. I've heard that there's a Maha Ratha Yatra festival taking place in Hagley Park. And I hope it's as crowded as the last time I went there. Yasoda, you were there, I think, when they had the memorial ceremony many years ago after the earthquake. There were a lot of people in the park. I don't know, you were there, Lakshmi? Maybe, how many years ago? Maybe 12 or 15, I don't know how many years ago. There was a memorial ceremony in Hagley Park. There were tens of thousands of people there. Tens of thousands, I don't know how many. I hope it's as busy today as it was then. And it will be amazing. They're all going to get prasadam. We're cooking today. I told them to cook for 100,000 today. Hopefully there'll be massive hundreds of devotees and huge Ratha Yatra carts. We have to see it like that, huh? That vision of seeing it. Prabhupada saw it like that. At least we can see, somebody mentioned last night, a very nice comment. I said, maybe 100,000 ants will get prasadam. The ants, maybe. And then they said, one devotee said, servants. They will be servants. 100,000 servants. Interesting word, isn't it? That's how related. So we're not our goal, but we will serve the ants also. They're also servants. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. We have to rush because we've got to go back and do all sorts of things and then rush off to Hagley Park. That's the plan. That's what happens. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.